customary for people to just install the facelift lights on the car. The forum says there's a 6-pin connector back here. You can just swap pins 5 and 6 to make them function. That is a half-truth. Yes, it will function, but this part of the light right here, which is the main tail light function, not the brake light function, but the tail light function, it only shines at about 50% dimness when all you do is change the wiring in the harness. And I have not changed this, I've changed it on the chassis, but it doesn't really matter. You could do it either way. But the problem is, if you're driving at night, the brightness level looks more like what you would see on like a darkly tinted taillight. The factory function for this taillight should be much brighter. It should be very bright and brilliant so that you can actually see it during the daytime. So the only way to get this light to function correctly on a pre-facelift car is there's a separate wire that runs to one of the pins that its sole function, it's a LIN bus wire, its sole function is to connect all 4 of the lights, both facelift headlights and both facelift taillights. That wire, ironically, does not show up on any of the service manual diagrams. Yeah, so there's the pre-facelift early V8 cars, the later V8 cars and V10 cars that are still pre-facelift, and then which had different headlights, so the diagrams are different, and then the facelift cars, and there's a version of the diagram on the taillights for the European facelift cars, because in Europe this light down here is actually a yellow LED. The function on the facelift actually it sweeps. So when you have your turn signal on, it's a sweeping function. So it has an extra wire for that. Well, on the US cars, there's a separate wire that runs from the central electronics control module, which is the body control module that controls all of the light functions, most of the sound functions. It hides your code for your key fob, your keyless entry for the car. So the facelift lights require a facelift central control module because the earlier cars were not programmed with the firmware needed to control the facelift lights. So you can program, if you go in on, like, if you're using VCDS from Rostec, which is what I primarily use on these cars, there will be an option, like a checkbox option, or it'll let you see like what the option code is for the facelift lights. It's actually wrong in the Rostec. It's actually, I think 6A is the pre-facelift code for the pre-facelift lights. It's AB is what they have in there. Well, AB are LMX lights, which have the laser headlights. That's a European designation for those. And for whatever reason, Rostec hasn't updated theirs, but actually the proper coding for the facelift lights is AC. On the headlights, it'll actually have the part number that'll say AC as like the suffix of the part number. To properly do facelift taillights, you also have to do facelift headlights. You also have to do a bunch of wiring just for the headlights. There's a considerable amount of wiring that has to be done. I think I have 4 wires to each headlight. Each of those 4 wires has to be repinned, and when you add the wire for the facelift headlight, you're adding it to a pin that already has a wire in it. You have to do that 3 times for every single wire that you're doing. And since there's 3 different connectors on the central control module, you have length differences in the wires. So some of those wires that you're moving to different pins, you actually have to extend. So it ends up being a much bigger project than you realize. Typically recommend, if you want to change the look of the rear taillights, the GT light is the easier way to go. You actually can do facelift headlights without changing the central control module, without changing a whole lot of wiring, without adding any wiring. You can actually take, I make an adapter harness that's just a plug and play harness. It's about, I don't know, 8 inches long. It just kind of repins the locations and joins some of the wire functions to make the facelift lights function. Probably make a forum post at some point and share what those wiring changes would be for someone who wants to go the extra mile and try to do one of these cars 100%. This only needs to be a 1-pin connector. It's going into the reverse sensor, so I don't have to have a male, I just need the female. Oh, I'm missing the teeth for this right here, so I'm gonna grab another one. The teeth are metal, but the clip itself is plastic. All that for a tiny detail, but I like my tiny details. All right, so that should clip right there. And then this sits here. I can zip tie up there and it'll still hang down. To get the third brake light function, this particular car, this particular bumper setup is, since it is a true LMX bumper, it does not have the side marker lights. Typically, the side marker lights are going to work as a tail light function. So you can hijack the side marker lights, which is just a gray with a black stripe wire. That's just gonna get your constant on when the lights are on tail light function. Since I'm doing a tail light and a brake light on the third brake light, I have to run a brake light wire to come from the third brake light, which on a coupe is right back there behind on the other side of the hatch. So that light wires through the interior. The reason you can't just tap off of the actual taillight brake light is because the same signal, the same wire controls your blinkers. So the only way to not get a blinker and to get an actual brake light function is to either tap into the actual third brake light or the wire that's running to it from the central control module in the passenger floorboard. You ready? We're not stopping. All right, these wires are going to control primarily your boiler function, backup camera if your car has one, and the tag frame lights. We're obviously removing our spoiler, so we're just gonna leave this disconnected. From the factory, they actually put like a dummy plug in it. Where it's sitting is not a location that typically gets wet, so it's not something that I'm super worried about. From the factory, they string this up with a series of 3 zip ties. I string them up with a series of 2 zip ties. Why? Because 2 is less than 3. A little something for everybody. All right, so this is just your left tag light. This one is your everything else. Funny enough, when the factory does these, it looks like this. They don't cut these off. So you go to open the thing up and it's just all like a hairy mess of zip ties, if they're even still there. The black nuts are going to be for our taillight. So black nuts, taillight, silver nuts, heat shield. And if you get them mixed up, your car won't start. That's not true, but Cosmos will be mad, so. You wanna try to push the light up as much as possible. Each of these things I'm adjusting, or that I'm tightening, have adjustments on them. You really want to get the tail light flush here and flush up here. There's a little piece of almost like protection film that is designed to press up against the paint. You kind of want to take advantage of that. And actually press up against the paint. It's on the inside of the quarter pan here. You want to try to get that nice tight in there. So even though it's typically more tempting, I would say, to use a ratcheting tool on these, I find it just a little bit more controllable to just use a single closed end box wrench. You can tighten it with your fingers all the way, and then you're gonna do like a quarter turn to get that last bit of tightening done. Okay, we're gonna plug in our light. Click. That's what we want to hear. All right, that looks pretty good. Move to the next side. Okay, next one. Okay, so now that we have this stuff taken apart, we have a little bit better access, but this is a very tricky one to reach. I'm gonna take this back off. Minuscule amount more space by not having it on here. Better to spend an extra 20 seconds taking something off peacefully than an extra 20 minutes cursing, trying to do it the hard way. All right, so this is the top of our bolt. See how much easier that is with that bracket out of the way. Pushing up and to the right, we want it up and out. We want to try to keep this gap as close as we can. And again, these have adjustments on them, so if your gap adjustment is not right, now's the time to dial that in. This has an adjustment. You'll see I can actually pull this up, but notice that it's also pulling the fender because this little black knob under here is pressed all the way up against the fender. So we're not trying to mess with the body panel line. We just want this pressed up as high as it'll go. All right, so we got one tight. We're gonna plug in our light, start our bolt, start our bolt. Just make sure that these clips are gonna be kind of loose in here. These things will try to start crooked like this one's doing. You don't wanna force it or push it because you will destroy it, and this is very small, fine thread. So I want to take it out and clean it up a little bit. Don't do this at home. Classic example of the don't show the ghetto stuff. All right, so we're gonna double check. We want tight gap, even across. Same deal here, tight gap, it's even, feels great. Your spacing in and out needs to be right because there's little humps on the top of here, one here, and there's one on the side here that are gonna like kind of sink up into this body, this crimp of this body panel. So you wanna make sure that it just sits like perfectly flush in there. If it's too far out or it's too far in, it's not gonna sit right. Now we've got a ground cable. This is for the radio antenna, I believe. And there's a little clip that just clips onto the tail light here. And it does that because when we go to put our bumper on, we wanna make sure this isn't tucked up under there. Okay, I think that's it for tail lights.